We're back again. Episode 8. I'm going to say it confidently this time, even if I'm wrong. And today we're here with Keanu and Christian.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, dude.
Thanks for coming.
Pleasure to be on, guys.
Yes. I'm a big fan of y'all's work, and I'm happy to be here to talk about Edge of Darkness with this cat right here.
Yeah.
Got a lot of cool stuff in the works, so.
Yeah, it's a film you're working on right now. It's like a fan film based on Escape from Tarkov?
Yes. So we, I guess I should start from the beginning. So in 2017, when the game first came out, I picked it up, and I picked it up because I saw a bunch of YouTubers cover it, and it looked so interesting, different from what I was playing. And fast forward to I think about a year ago, I had a conversation with another filmmaker, a really practical conversation, like, hey, realistically, like, just, and the script was very like, it was there, but there were some details that I just hadn't ironed out yet. And I kind of wanted, him to kind of tell me outright, like, hey, you've kind of done a lot more than I have. He was working on sets using like virtual production. And so I admired his brain sort of his decision making. So I was like, all right, realistically, man, lay it on me. How's this going to work? And he was like, well, I think this is possible. The only thing you really have to worry about is, some accurate locations. Cause he was also familiar with the game as well. And he's like, oh, I think if you get that down, I think you have a strong chance. Cause then you can, the costumes and all that stuff will follow. It's just the locations. The game takes place in Russia, in a fictional territory known as the Norvinsk region. So a lot of it was very Eastern European looking, stuff that you would not find in Central Texas necessarily. Right. Yeah. And so
Not Texas.
right. And so that was a good point. I was like, all right. So I began looking, and then I came across some pretty cool different options for locations. And then I can't remember what happened next. I think I just was sort of like laying low for a little bit, just kind of figuring out everything. Like, okay, before I present this to people, I kind of want to make sure I have at least some things in line. I don't want to look like a schmuck coming at people and being like, hey, so this is kind of like this thing. And I wanted to make sure I had some of my bases covered. And then I found Manuela Valencia. She's our unit production manager. Found her on Facebook. She had just moved from Colombia to San Antonio. And I saw her resume, her bio. She had done some Netflix productions, some stuff for HBO Max. She was really advertising her coordination and her organization skills. And I was like, that's something I think I could use right now. Yeah. Considering it was like, I knew I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I kind of think I need somebody to kind of set some foundational standards here. You know what I mean? And once I brought her in, right out the gate, she was very, very honest with the script I had, the intentions I had, and sort of the vision I had. She's like, yeah, it's possible, but you kind of have to change this, and that. And so I was like, okay, it was very, very, another realistic conversation. I was like, okay, well, it sounds like this is something that could be tangible. There's just got to be a little bit more sort of like foresight to be done. And then that's when I hit up this guy. We had actually already been working for about a year, yeah. He owns a production company, Stryder Studios, and then I'll let you talk to us about what you guys do over there.
Well, I got to give kudos to Manuela though, because Keanu's not joking. She's the most like brutally honest person I've ever met in my entire life.
That's good. You need that.
But you need
industry.
that. You need that.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. Like,
That's
it's
cool.
very rare to find somebody who's like, hey, like, this might hurt your feelings, but I'm telling you because I care.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It's going to be, you're better off for this.
Yeah.
100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was cool. Like, I was super excited when Keanu came to us, like, with the Tarkov project, because me and Keanu have been working together, and I guess a little bit of backstory. We're both filmmakers here in San Antonio, and so we're both running in the same circles, and for the longest time too, like, it was funny because I've always been super into movies, and I never thought there was like a lot of filmmaker people in San Antonio because it's always felt like very siloed here.
Yeah.
And nobody, like, for whatever reason, was like aware of each other. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But over the years, I feel like it's gotten better. So, eventually I linked up with Keanu, and I'm like, man, we've both been doing this here some years. And I'm surprised we never ran into each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Tarkov project, super cool. I think it was something that I'm also like a big, video game advocate and stuff. And I would say it's like my second creative passion.
Yeah, nice.
I have a really weird like knack for just like liking like following like the industry. I just find like entertainment industries like cool. Like I just like following them. And so I've seen a lot of like pitfalls with video game movies and stuff like that, and kind of where I feel they go wrong. And when me and Keanu were talking about it, I'm like, okay, I think if we do all these things right, we respect like the fan base, we respect the lore, but we don't misunderstand that we're interpreting it to like a new medium too. Then I think we'll hit like some good, I think we'll do this project right.
Yeah, do some justice.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of where all the projects always like fall. Like they're either way too by the book, and they have like no idea how to adapt it to like a film.
Yeah,
or they're so off base that you're like, why'd you even make this? Like, this isn't even like the same thing, Yeah. And so I think it's like a good sweet spot, and I think that's what we're trying to hit. So I think it's that's what got me interested. And I'm like, all right, we got to talk about this project. So
I had actually we had. It's funny because Christian was, every single time we'd go on a gig, Christian would ask like, hey, how's it going? But I had always like intentionally not said a lot because I didn't want to be like, this and this and this, because I've sort of like encountered that when you talk to people about their project, sometimes they get they talk about it a little too much, and then sometimes a lot of it isn't figured out yet. I didn't want to I didn't want to do that to myself, because there was still a lot where I was like, I think I want to do this, or I think I want to go into this direction. But Manuel and I had a lot of like just organizing to do. We were building a pitch deck, the one I sent you guys, and
it was clean.
Thank you.
Really nice.
Yeah, she put all that together, and that was kind of like what I needed. Is like, hey, look, this is such like if we're gonna do this, we have to follow like a really specific organization like path. Otherwise, like this can fall apart really fast. And I also knew that like when I wrote it, I didn't want it to be. I think when people hear about like Escape from Tarkov, I think they insinuate that it might be like an action-based game, and it is a multiplayer online game. There's no story mode, which is kind of funny. The story is sort of embedded in like these quest lines that you're able to do, and sort of like it's very like a world building type game.
Okay.
One of those games kind of you explore the map and then you kind of uncover the story that way. There's a lot of graffiti that sort of point towards what's going on in this world. There's a lot of newspaper excerpts that you can find scattered throughout the floors of the maps, and then going back to the quest lines, these different traders that you're able to interact with in the game, they kind of tell you what's going on. And so the story isn't sort of like, it's not sort of spoon-fed to you. It's, you really kind of have to like piece it together.
Uncover it yourself.
Yeah, but when you put it together, it's really, really unique. And one of the cool things about the game is that it's not very like, it's very realistic. So a lot of the combat that you sort of get into is not like you're familiar with Call of Duty. Call of Duty is real balls to wall action. Sometimes it's like too hard to focus on what's going on. There's so many things going on, but Tarkov is really like really contained. If you get into a gunfight, you're more than likely fighting like maybe 3 people, and so it's really manageable rather than like fighting like, I don't know,
Halo, the Flood, hiding to recharge.
You got all that. So, but it makes it a lot more like suspenseful. Like
cool.
A lot of people actually play the game with like a heartbeat monitor. And so because like once you get into those gunfights, really all your choices matter. Like, okay, you got 30 rounds in your clip. Is really like, some people could be wearing really good armor, and the bullets you may be carrying maybe is not armor piercing. So, and you won't know that until you fire the first shot, and you're like, oh shit, that guy didn't die. You know what I mean? And so it's a lot of it, you got to like think. And so I wanted to translate that into the film. And so when I was pitching it to Christian, I said, look, this is not an action movie. It needs to feel very like really contained. These guys we're not following traditional military. We're following privatized military corporations. I think that's another unique aspect about the game. And in the film, there's like, okay, these guys are very covert, and they're trained. And they're dangerous. And so when these guys fire, they're going to be hitting their shots. And so a lot of these action sequences, I stressed to Christian, like, hey, they need to feel really like these guys, they know what they're doing. They're firing the shots, they're hitting their bullets. And these gunfights got to be over like, maybe T-minus, like we're only focusing on this action for maybe like a minute. And so I think that is what is kind of unique about Edge of Darkness in that way, is that I don't want people to think that we're going into this with the intention that we're trying to create something like that is unobtainable, like inattainable, right? It's like all of it is inspired by Sicario. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
Oh, that's
with
a
that
good
film.
one. Yeah.
Stalker.
I saw, those two of my favorite directors.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So we're definitely going for the more slow burn, and a lot of the movies actually intertwine with a lot of the political aspect of Tarkov. So there's world leaders that are talking about what's happening as we're also cutting in between the soldiers that are actually in Tarkov
on the ground.
Yeah, and you sort of get like two sides of war. The narcissistic side where these guys in suits and ties and are deciding, how these wars are fought.
Yep.
And in this case, it's more of like a shadow war because it's like I said, privatized military. And so that's another unique aspect of the entire story is that we're not following like the United States military. Yeah. We're following it's a fictional faction that go by United Security, but it's very real in our history. So it's really interesting.
We're trying to do it right,
Yeah.
I think it's authenticity, and it's it's like this is very much more immersion driven than it is like high, like to his point, high octane. And so that's the only reason I was like, okay, this seems like, it's definitely on the fringe. Like there's a lot we have to put together to make it happen, but it definitely doesn't seem as nearly as crazy as us trying to I don't know, do something super wild,
right? With like explosions,
doing like a 1917.
Yeah, right. We're not doing Apocalypse Now, so it's like, okay, that's cool. I can check, as long as it's not Apocalypse Now. But yeah, I think it's cool because like one of the things that we're with it is just like I've always been super big on like trying to like when I first got into the industry, like I was very much like into the writing aspect and directing aspect, and that's kind of got me like super interested. All my technical stuff came like way later, and like I hated like the technical side of like filmmaking. I was like, and so for me, like I feel like I'm very right and left brain driven. And so I always looking at things kind of like a little bit in a more architectural way where I'm trying to like figure out how the pieces work together. And I like that level of problem solving.
Nice.
And so for me, like seeing something like this, like I kind of like to see like, okay, how do we translate elements from a game that don't quite translate to a movie?
Yeah.
And whether or not we're successful in that, I think we're definitely trying to be, but I figuring out that problem's cool.
Yeah.
And it was funny because me and Keanu talked a lot about it early on, and like one of the game series that I'm a big fan of is Dark Souls and like Elden Ring and those games. And one of the big things they do, like it was very analogous to me because I'm like, those games are very much like masochist games. Like they're known to be incredibly hard and punishing and so
I'm having fun.
Right, exactly. And so, when Keanu was talking about this game, I'm like, yeah, that sounds familiar. I kind of know, I kind of get it, And in those games too, it's very similar because like, you're moving through a world where there's no exposition. You just have to infer things from just seeing like the sights. Yeah. Like you see like a destroyed castle in the distance and you're like, what the hell? What happened? Like, and it's like a dragon like crashed into it and you're like, but it's like, it's setting things up. So it immediately translated to me that I was like, okay, if we can pull that off and we can actually try to do like depth and storytelling through like the world and the landscape, then I think we'll actually be like trying to push something in, adapting it with a medium that actually would be interesting.
That sounds sick.
Yeah. And another interesting bit too is, well, we had a clear vision of what we wanted Tarkov to be for sort of a Western audience, and I say a Western audience because Battlestate Games, the developers of Escape from Tarkov, we actually been speaking with them, and we have their official endorsement.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Pretty cool. That was a big one for us.
Yeah, and that happened in the funniest way possible.
Very casual.
Yeah, it was very casual, but and BSG won't get mad at me for saying this, but I love you guys. But they were going through some controversy. They just released a new version of the game, and it was met with some backlash. The fans weren't too happy, and thankfully Battlestate and all the team over there did walk back on a lot of things that the community wasn't happy about. But it was a really sort of tedious time for the community. It felt very like I don't know, like just
Well, the energy seems like it's been really good for the game, so I think that was probably his first big kind of like...
The community has always been super vocal about what they want for Tarkov, what they want to see in Tarkov, what they don't want to see in Tarkov, and so when this new version of the game came out with some advantages that weren't available to the other editions of the game, it sort of presented this sort of, hey, this might be pay to win. And Battlestate Games, again, they did acknowledge that, and they did start course correcting, but that left a very sour taste in their mouth. And one of the biggest criticisms among the community was like, hey, you guys should talk to us more. And Battlestate was like, sure. And so they started being more active on Twitter. And I sort of was like, it'd be kind of funny if I was just like, hey, we were 9 months in at the time. No, I'm sorry, 8 months in at the time. Or was it 7? I'm not sure. One of the months. And I was feeling pretty confident how far we were. I don't remember if we prepared any sort of marketing content up at this point, but we had some stuff planned, I believe. And so I was like I was feeling pretty good about where we were with the project, and I tweeted at them, and I tweeted at their head of PR, Dimitri, and I was like, hey, this is what we're doing. And at the time, Fallout just came out, and I remember seeing articles like, Fallout 4 has reached 1.1 million concurrent players as a single player game. Yeah. And then like Fallout 76 had a surge of like 2,000%. The sales were like going through the roof, and I was like, that's interesting. Like, because Fallout had a really good, strong start, and then as the episodes started going more and more, people were like, holy shit, this is a really faithful adaptation to the game. Yeah. So it kind of showed, I think, sort of like the mainstream, what a good video game adaptation could do for your property. And I use that to my advantage. Like, hey guys, we're working on this. We think it could do something like Fallout, considering, what's been going on with the community. Yeah. We'd love to talk to you guys. We think it'd be really good sort of promotion. And I hit send on the tweet, and I waited. I think I waited like not even like 2 hours, and I was in a meeting with actually our prop guys for the movie. Nice. And we were talking to them about costumes and stuff. I was like, all right guys, this is what we want. We're doing this. We were planning to do some test footage, and I was talking to the prop guys about what we wanted for the costumes. And I shit you not, during that meeting, Dimitri, the head of PR at Battlestate Games, tweets me back, and he's like, hey, check your DM. And like, I literally like stood up and started screaming. And I was like, because the prop guys, I wouldn't do that if they weren't fans of Tarkov. That'd be a little like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? No, they were a geek. They were huge fans of the game as well.
That's cool.
And so I felt like I was like, all right, well, I think I have permission to freak out here a little bit. Like, guys, dude, BSG just hit me back. Like, look.
Yeah, that's gonna be inspiring for them too.
Yeah, And so they were like, holy shit, like this. It would almost suddenly became like a jolt of like, oh fuck, here we are talking about the costumes for this movie, and then and we have Battlestate Games,
layer of reality.
I had to contain myself though, because I still had like about an hour left in this meeting, and so I didn't want to be all like, But then immediately after that meeting, I hung up and I called him. I was like, Christian, and he thought I had bad news. You remember? He's like, what happened? And I was like, no. Well, I didn't tell him that I did that. Yeah. I just, because again, it was just sort of off the cuff. Yeah. I had just been seeing how much they were interacting with fans. And so not only that too, but it was funny because like this ties into another project we were doing, because right before that, we had another project that we were trying to tell the story of this girl who's on TikTok. That's right.
Who, her dad has dementia. It's actually super crazy. Like, her dad has dementia, and my grandmother has dementia. So I was like, I've been wanting to do a story on that for a long time. So when Keanu had kind of like stumbled on them, it was like super interesting. She has dementia. The mom had an accident, and she basically can't remember anything past like a day. So she has like almost like 51st dates thing going on. So, and both of her parents like live with her. And we were going to do a story on that. And we had like a really great, like we had gotten so far in the process, and like even to the point where like I did like an hour and a half long like interview where we just kind of went through and asked her a bunch of stuff. And
we did two.
Yeah. We did two. Yeah, we did
two sit downs with them.
And so we were really excited. And then out of nowhere, she went completely cold. Oh. And coincidentally, she was doing and she had told us this in advance, but she was doing a documentary with another company around the time. And what we think happened was that maybe she had some sort of non-compete or not
they slapped some
exclusivity
kind
deal,
on there, yeah.
and we just maybe she wasn't aware, or she mentioned it and they said something. So anyway, so when Keanu called me, I was over here like PTSD trauma.
Yeah, not again.
They're like, yeah,
Okay.
Because one of our concerns was being shut down by Battle State because we just didn't know, like, you know, fan films. It's always like a, you know, tricky
gray area kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Most organizations see it as good free promotion,
free advertising,
free advertisement. Or sometimes, like most recently, actually, Warner Brothers actually just strike down a 10-year-old like Lord of the Rings fan film.
Oh,
I think it was called like The Rings of Gollum or something like that. Unintentionally, because they just announced that they're doing a feature film called Rings of Gollum, and so not related to the short film, but they strike down that guy's short film 10 years after it's been up. But then they brought it back. They brought it back, and so that was on our minds, and so I knew that, like, DMing Battle State, like, this could go really bad. This could be good. They could be like, shut that shit down. You know what I mean? Like, cease and desist. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. No, but it was the exact opposite. I was like, Christian, they want to meet with us. And he was like, are you fucking serious?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, yes, dude, they want to talk. And then we joked, like, maybe they just want to talk, and the first thing they're going to say is cease and desist.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? All right.
But
meeting once we got in that meeting, though, it was fun.
it was, yeah.
It was cool. It was funny because it was so casual, and I almost caught it. Like, you never know what to expect, but they're from Russia, and you know, it's just a very different social culture. It's very matter of fact, and like, and so it's funny because like we get in this meeting, and Keanu justifiably is freaking out because he's a fan, you know, and I'm a little unbiased, so it's helpful. But I could relate, I could understand. But when we get into the meeting, like, it was funny because I think the first time we were meeting with them, he was like, hey, we'll meet at 11 or whatever. And then 11 comes around in cold turkey, and we're like, man, we got lucky. Maybe, you know, maybe it was too good to be true. And then I think he messaged us. He's like, hey, sorry, I was running late or something. So I think
we went a whole 24 hours.
That's right. And he randomly messaged us the next day. He was like, hey, can you guys jump on right now? Like, yeah, all right, we'll make it happen. So we all jump on the meeting, and we start telling about, you know, they kind of, I think, looked it over briefly maybe, but not like fully. And so we start talking to them, and
they just let us actually talk. Like, it was like a full hour. They were just like, okay, tell us. And we were like, And so I just started geeking out. We developed a strategy right before then. We were like, okay, I'll open it. I'll talk about my relationship to the game, like why I even want to do this. Yeah. And then we'll hand it off to, I can't remember if it was you or Manuela next, but we went down the line. Like, Manuela was talking about sort of the holistic approach that we're going with, you know, like how practically we were going to do these things. And then Christian came in and put a nice little bow on it. He was like, hey, you know, I'm a producer, and you know, I don't really, not familiar with Tarkov, but it seems really interesting. Basically, you know, selling the whole concept as sort of a Western adaptation, because Battle State Games already has 2 live action adaptations of Escape from Tarkov that they did, and so that was one of the caveats that we were like, we kind of have to we knew going in, like, we had to explain why this version has to exist and why we even want it to exist in the first place. And they were, you know, gracious enough to not even, they didn't even acknowledge that, like,
the other two.
Yeah, like, I think they knew that it was going to be different, and like they didn't seem concerned that we were going to be stepping over their toes, which was really like assuring to us, like, okay, you know. And then once we finished, I remember Dimitri was like, I like. He was like, I like it.
There was a matter of fact, and that's what I'm saying. It was weird. It was just like, we're this whole thing, and then at the end, he's like, we like, you do. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And then, then the questions started, you know, barreling through. So, like, you know, what do you want to, how do you want to do this? When are you going to do this? A lot of questions that we weren't expecting. Do you want to make money off of this? Yeah. Is there going to be a Kickstarter? Yeah, and they were just super open, and they wanted us to be open with our goals and what we wanted to do, and I told them, like, hey, we're not trying to make this out of spite of your versions. Like, we don't have the mindset of like, this is going to be better. Yeah. We don't have the mindset of like of wanting to do like anything too different, because we understood. I mean, I especially me, like I knew being mistreated as a Halo fan and seeing that show deviate so far from the source. I'd be damned if I walked into like a meeting with the developers and be like, yeah, so you know what? I think we're gonna create, we're gonna do this. But I was honest, like, hey, we're not following your version. It's like it has to be something else, but we're not changing anything that you guys covered. Like, there's a very foundational story to Tarkov. Mm-hmm. We're not changing that. Like, we're still following the three main factions: a USEC, a Bear operator, which Bear is the Russian counterpart to the Americans in the game story, and then we're focusing on the scavengers. Scavengers are the sort of the normal people of Tarkov, that sort of
local inhabitants.
Yeah, exactly. And I said this is going to be different because we're actually not focusing on the military guys per se. We're focusing on the scavs, like, because the scavs in the game are sort of like secondhand nature. You can play as a scav and you can interact with them in the game, but they're sort of always aggressive towards you, and so it's almost like shoot on sight. You don't really have any real empathy for them in that regard. But then that's why I was like, I think it'd be interesting to focus on just...
That's a cool perspective.
Right, yeah, just switch it, like, yeah, okay, we've seen the USEC, we've seen the Bear side, but what would it be like if we sort of took this game and we sort of presented a very human aspect of the story and made a very human story within this sort of like this chaotic environment? And I think once we told them that, and then I think what also sold it to them was like, hey, this is an American version. Most of the characters are going to be speaking English, but I did get lucky. 2 of our main guys are Russian and will be speaking Russian for the roles, with a mix of English. So it's a mix between, because I really like, sticking to the sort of true culture of different ethnicities and stuff like that. So I knew very early on, like, I didn't want it to all be in English, but when it needed to be. So, when you have, American characters speaking with the Russian characters, they do know how to speak English as well, because that is something I feel like an operator would know how to do, is speak Russian and English at the same time, especially
if they're in there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it would make sense, to keep it both sides. And once we told him that, that's when, Dimitri was like, he saw how passionate we were, and, he let us do it.
That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. Like, that the studio's in on it. Like, they're just that about their fans.
I'm kind of lying a little bit. We waited for like, what was it? Like a week and a half before they actually gave us the true green light. Cause we talked to Dimitri, he's the head of PR, but then there's another guy, Nikita, who is the CEO of Battlestate Games. He's the man, the myth, the legend. He comes on every podcast, YouTube clips. He's the guy that kind of comes out and talks about what the next update's going to be. And so he's very well known in the community, and the community makes a bunch of memes about him that I sent him and the team, like, hey guys, this is kind of who we're working with. And so, it was very like a really fun little thing to kind of show you guys, and kind of, they're not like these, because I don't know, I guess like studios can kind of present themselves to be like sort of, I don't know, suit and tie.
All right.
So it's nice to sort of break that
They're
wall.
not like that for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So we're just gearing up for launch now. I mean, it's really just become like, they told us that, and then it was very much like, okay, how do we get this thing on the road quick?
Yeah.
Cool.
I remember that we were like, oh yeah, what now? we got PSG here. I can't remember what was after that. After we got the green light.
Well, I think, like I said, I think we pretty much were gearing up for launch. I think it was pretty much just becoming like, okay, how do we get everything in place? We need to like launch a successful Kickstarter. And part of it too, like we knew, was just like, okay, here's some schmo Joe guys asking for money. Why should I care? And so that's been the biggest challenge. We've been trying to figure out how to overcome that hurdle. It's just trying to talk on like the key things that we think will resonate with people who like good movies, and also like the crowd that likes this game, that
like
can kind of understand how to translate, And so I think we're trying to say the right things to kind of, put those bugs in their ears. So
finding your target audience, and then branding, marketing towards them.
Yeah.
So,
And that's mostly how I've been seeing it. So it's mostly just been trying to, and the other thing too is like, I think when somebody invests in a project, they're usually investing in the concept. They're not, but at the same time, I think there is a level of like, hey, we got to at least bring something to the table, so you kind of know we're capable enough, that we actually know what we're doing, So we did a conceptual test recently that we're gonna probably, we're gearing up to use it for the launch, but just some stuff to kind of showcase like the concepts of what we're doing.
Cool.
Big shots with, what looks like Tarkov composite in the background and tanks and, just trying to showcase like, hey, this is what we're aiming at.
Yeah. And having the studio back it has got to be a huge like selling point to have on the website or your GoFundMes.
Yeah.
Especially like has kind of that built-in audience of like the fan base of the game already. Like, I don't know if you go in like the Tarkov like subreddits or whatever, like different forums and stuff.
Yeah. I actually try not to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure they'd be, excited about it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what's so funny? Actually, I did have a conversation with the moderator of the Tarkov Reddit.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, hey guys, we're doing this movie. Because they have a rule like no self-promotion or you can't do a post that contains a call to action. And I'm like, well, fuck. That kind of like defeats the whole purpose. Like, we can't do a post and then do a call to action to lead into the Kickstarter. But I was like, okay, well, what if, come on, like let me share this one thing. And it was the poster. And they're like, okay, we'll let you share this. And then I think I haven't spoke to the gentleman since, but I'm gonna come, hey guys, so update. We got VSG here, and I think we can find a little workaround. But yeah, the subreddit is definitely an interesting place. It's
very varied opinions. All the fans, they're funny. Yeah, they're funny.
Very opinionated.
Oh
that's a good point.
You know what? And the funny thing is, like, engagement is engagement because we get comments on the Instagram, and it'd be like, because the film is called Edge of Darkness, right? And so we're setting them up for great success because they'll comment like, "Oh wow, I can't wait for Edging in Darkness." I can't wait for.
That's good.
I'm like, you know what? I see it as like, okay, we're attracting the right crowd.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of it. Like, I'll be like, hey, or they'll be like, oh, what, Edging in Darkness? I was like, hey, that's actually the name for the sequel. You know what I mean? Like,
Who told you?
Or another silly comment we get, which is I love because the going back to the whole controversy that I told you about Battle State and the new edition, the most infamous sort of tidbit about that whole thing was that the new edition was like $100 more because I paid like $150 for like the edition called Edge of Darkness, which is where the title comes from. But with the announcement of this new edition, they raised the price to $250. And so and it sort of like came with a bunch of incentives and stuff like that. And so one of my favorite comments is on TikTok or Instagram, someone's like, is this going to cost like $250 to watch? And I'm like, fuck you guys.
Maybe. For you, maybe.
If you ask me, I might make it.
After that comment.
Right, yeah. So it's always fun seeing the community's response thus far because we've only been slightly introduced. Battlestate Games has been kind enough to repost some of our introductory social media posts. Oh, cool. But we haven't formally come out and been like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we're doing.
That'll be the launch.
Yeah. We've got like tons of marketing videos that we just shot that we're lining up to sort of keep up with the 60-day window.
Nice.
But yeah, we haven't formally come out and said like, hey, this is what we're asking for. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
All of that's going to be for Kickstarter launch. And once that happens, that's when the floodgates are really going to be open. You know what I mean?
So we're looking forward to that. Yeah. And it's cool too, because like, I think it's cool just to have this project in San Antonio too, I mean, some of it we're probably, we're going to have to film just in Texas in general, but I mean, the fact that we're Texas based filmmakers doing a project here, like that's a big passion thing for me. Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. It's not often you get something that has a big name attached to San Antonio. Yeah. So I think that's pretty exciting.
It is also exciting. Yeah. That's a good point. I don't think there's been, actually, no, there was you guys played Rainbow Six Siege. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
They had a fan film, I think, here in Texas.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, it was based on Rainbow Six Siege. Although I don't know if they had the backing of Ubisoft.
Yeah.
But that was cool. That was here in Texas. Yeah. That was the only thing I can think of on the top of my head that's video game related that was shot here.
Yeah.
How'd you guys get into film? Like, where'd your beginnings start in?
For me, it was as a kid, I loved movies growing up. I was with my dad all the time. My favorite part of the movie was honestly watching the movie, but then after the fact, us talking about the movie. Especially when we go see like movies that were, maybe a little bit something to think on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that process. And I think that's kind of what got me like super into like movies and just kind of, and it was funny too, because like I always really like trying to figure out like how somebody kind of gets in a film or how just in creative aspects in general, because I think like it kind of shows, I think, your perspective on how you probably see, your creative medium, depending on kind of like what your roots are. And, growing up, my mom always thought I was going to be like an engineer or something, because I used to just love building stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I think like it was cool because I think those two things kind of came together in filmmaking for me for some reason, and, I remember, there's an old photo I have like in this album. I was probably 8 years old, and my, and I was having to find this one day, and it was me like at 8, and like it was one of those albums where you can write like a quote next to it. And it was my dad quoting me what I'm saying at 8 years old, saying, "I want to be a director." I didn't even know what that was.
Oh, cool.
But it's cool, man. Like I think I just love. It was funny because I had dabbled in so many different things growing up. Like I actually got into music for a bit and was doing that. Thought that was going to be my thing. And then I actually got into a little bit of podcasting, like you guys, and was doing that for a bit. And so I was always kind of like testing different creative waters. But to me, my calling always kept coming back to film. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'm glad I ventured and tried things, and I was grateful for the experiences. But one day I decided, I'm going to start. I want to do this for real, and now we have a production company with 6 full-time employees, and
awesome.
We got this is our first year now. We're producing 3 films, which is funny because I kind of said I wanted to dabble my toes in the water a little bit. And I've always tried to be strategic and not like go like too far in. I was like, I'm doing 1 this year, guys. 1. Now we're doing 3. And it's funny because it was kind of like a wave, because a lot of the people that we employ are very like passionate about filmmaking. And that's kind of what I always look for, a little bit in somebody. I mean, it depends on what your job is, but like I think in creative elements, for me, I can at least connect and understand somebody's incentives and like goals and what might be important to them, because I can relate to it if they're also like passionate about film. And so, one of the guys we work with had come to us, and he's like, hey, like I want to do this short film, and I've been working with you guys for some years, and there's a film called True Self by director Alec Dyer, and this is probably like in November. And it was just kind of he got like a few bucks from a somewhat big TikToker who wanted to get into movie producing, and it was enough to make the film happen. And we said, you know what, let's make it work.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And then that kind of kicked off the creative bug, and I was like, all right, I got to fix, and I got to scratch the itch.
Where's the next one?
Right, and then it was Jackson's film Inertia, Jackson Kibbe's film Inertia that we're super super excited about. Now we're gearing up for launch on this one, so
hell yeah,
it's been fun.
It's been a good year.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's been fun.
Busy for sure. Yeah. I guess my start is I'm actually from California, so I'm not from San Antonio.
Okay. Nice.
But I originally, when I was a kid, wanted to be an actor. Like that's what I really wanted to do. And I remember distinctly, I would always get approached. My mom and I would always get approached by like casting directors, and who knows if they were, kissing our ass or not, but they would always like, hey, your kid's real cute. You should bring him here, bring him there. And it would happen enough where I'd be like, Mom, be like, come on, like just do this. Enough for me to notice, like, something's up here. Yeah. So, and then we would always hear on the radio. I don't even know if they still do this anymore, but they'd go like, hey, we're throwing auditions for Disney Channel here at the Hyatt, or at this hotel.
Yeah, I got roped into one of those.
Yeah. So, but it was one for Disney Channel for a show called Austin and Ally, which was an old show back in the day. I think I don't remember what year, but
1950.
And I was like, Mom, please, like we have to just try. Like we've always, all of this stuff like we hear on the radio, all these casting directors, like it just would really like bug me, because I'm like, I just want to try it.
Yeah.
And so she's like, all right. So she called and we talked to the casting director, and they're like, yeah, what's the name? And they would, I think the name helped too, Keanu, and so they're like, oh yeah. And so they're like, yeah, come in. And we had a front slot for one, like 11 in the morning, downtown LA. And I remember like waking up fucking early as shit, bright-eyed, ready to go. Didn't even know what the fuck I was gonna do. And then I was like, Mom, let's go. And then she's like, yeah, no. Like last minute something came out. I can't remember what. I don't know if it was because I know she made something up, and I was like, dude, what? Yeah. And that really killed it right there. I was like, you know what? I guess maybe it's just not meant to be. And then as I got older, I started to hear more and more about sort of the exploitation of children in the industry, and I was like, well, maybe my mom was kind of maybe she was kind of like backing me up. Maybe she, I don't know, maybe it's just intuition. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine. You know? And then I'd shifted over to writing at that age. Like I was writing stuff and drawing stuff at that young of an age. I think it was like I had like the hobby store right down the street from my house had sold like these blank white booklets that were like, I think like 120 pages. And like I begged my mom to buy me like 4 of them. And like I literally sketched out like storyboards and then would just write.
That's awesome.
And I think I was trying to find those very recently. I could not. They're somewhere in the house, but and then that was around the time where I found out my dad was a filmmaker, but he didn't really he didn't pursue it as much as I did. He only was like, I think, a PA on one film when he was my age, and he actually worked on the Paramount lot.
Oh, nice.
And he would tell me stories about it, and he dug up a bunch of his old stuff. One of them was like a book on cinematography.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, but it was in the 70s, so it was like so everything that I was reading, it was what, like fucking 2005. But there was still some good stuff in there, really good stuff. And then he gave me the Sony Handycam that took the little cassette tapes, the high tapes.
Yeah, I remember.
And then that's when it really started.
Yeah.
I started doing like stop motion stuff with it. Like I actually turned some of those films in that booklet into films, and then and then I would just shoot stuff with my friends around the block. And then I actually stopped like actually filming stuff for a little bit, like in middle school, because it was really like insecure, because like I knew like it almost felt like I knew I was like ambitious, but I'm like fucking 11. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it would always piss me off. Like, why can't I make Transformers right now? Like, why is this not working? And it wouldn't click with my brain that like, oh, these guys have like hundreds and hundreds of people on these. I didn't know that. Like, I thought films were made by one guy. Yeah. And that was it.
How do you pull that off?
Dude, I know. I'm like, what the fuck?
Especially all the actors too.
Yeah, and especially because I remember distinctly Transformers came out in 2007. So all of that just started to line up, and then I was like, dude, who's this Michael Bay guy? How the fuck did he do this? Directed by Michael Bay. And so that's really when it started. And then I stopped doing any sort of like visual stuff. I just kept writing because I was like, I don't really like what I'm doing, and I just want to get better, and I don't know really how to get better. Then I'm just gonna write. Yeah. And then like I stopped for years, and then I didn't pick a camera back up until like 8th grade. And I met like some friends, my best friends that I know now. I made a short film called In My Remains, which was like my first attempt at doing some like indie fucking pre-A24 shit.
Nice.
It was about a guy. Actually, a story that my grandmother told me. She knew a guy that like had cancer, and like she only knew him for like a couple of days, and then he died. Yeah. And then I was like, dude, grandma, that's fucking sad. That's wild. Yeah. So I wrote it, and then it was a little different because I didn't want to be like the same. And then I casted this guy and his actual grandmother in 8th grade, and like it was like the first time where I was like kind of going through the steps. Yeah. And I kind of knew it's because of theater. I was in tech theater, and so I got to know like a little bit more organizational skills. And then that's when I was like, yeah, dude, this is gonna be real dramatic. Like this shit's gonna be fire. You know what I mean?
Ever heard of the Oscars?
Yeah. I'm coming for it.
Hello, I'm on my way.
You can just send it here.
But then the guy that I casted like dropped out the day before we shot. He got scared. And then I was like, fuck. Well, then what about your grandmother? Can she still be in the movie? Like, yeah. Well, if I'm not in it, it's kind of weird if my grandmother's like playing sound. I was like, fuck. Okay.
Well, acting, dude.
Yeah. That's what I said.
Do you think everybody in the movie's related?
Right. We can only cast the family. We just can't find anybody to agree.
You know, it's funny that you say that because that's exactly why I did that. I was like, I think it'd be easier if we just kept him like, actual grandmother and grandson. I was like,
there's something to that though.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Especially when you're renegade like that.
But if you jump off the day before, we're still gonna use your grandma.
So then I was like, fuck, who am I gonna get? I was like, well, I guess I'll fucking be in the movie. And so it's like, I've always wanted to act. So I put myself in it, put my grandmother in it, and then. But there was a scene in the movie where I had written a scene where like the main character had to kiss the girl that he wanted, and I was like, wait, fuck, oops. I can't do that. but then the actress that I actually ended up picking was like from theater, And she was like, oh, this is like totally normal. I was like, it is?
Yeah.
I was like, and then it was so funny to me because like, wait, if it was normal, like why was I going to ask somebody else to do it and not I don't know. Yeah. It was just a funny little conundrum I had sort of, just all these things I was learning about like wanting things, but then like not really thinking about like the normal, like the sort of the normalcy of it, especially since they're coming from theater. And there was like, she was like, yeah, this happens all the time. And I was like, oh, okay, well then sure. Yeah, let's do it. And then I shot it and we premiered it, and dude, I thought it was the hottest shit on the block.
Yeah.
And then like not even a week later, like I gouged my eyes out. I was like, dude, I can't watch this shit. But that's kind of what started that whole like thing. I was like, okay, well, I like that. I want to get better at that. Yeah. And I just kept doing that same thing, like just writing stories, organizing it, shooting it, like really like finding things I hated about it, and then just trying not to do that the next time.
Yeah.
It was like a repetitious cycle.
Sounds like a good process.
Yeah. I think that's the most interesting part of filmmaking too, is like there's so many points of relatability between filmmakers, like, and just kind of some of the hurdles and the struggles and like the things you figure out. That's what I find interesting is like, for me, I always think like seeing how all those things connect and kind of, you know, this film did this thing this way, this film did it this way. What piece of it worked, what piece of it didn't, why, you know, and even with stuff like that, like, you know, I'll see like, what's the name of the brothers that directed Uncut Gems?
Oh, Safdie Brothers.
Safdie Brothers.
Yeah.
And like I see their stuff, and like, you know, I saw, you know, they had like a lot of the kind of real life casted kind of some people like in their films, like the gem cutters and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was like authenticity about it that I was like, man, this is like, this doesn't feel like a movie. Like there's parts of it. And so, you know, there's some things where it's like I've had like mind blowing things like that. Sometimes that'll change my perspective. And I'm like, you know, if I was cutting, if I was needing to put somebody in a film or a very specific role of a very niche thing that was kind of a very niche group of people, I might actually find something interesting in trying to like go to somebody real, you know? So the fact that I still can find things in film that kind of blow my mind like that, or just kind of change my perspective and like, hey, you know, what if this particular thing was approached this way? I think that's what makes it constantly interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
That's cool.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I again stopped doing that process of like writing and then doing it, organizing, because again I became insecure about what I was doing. I was like, well, like it still wasn't working out. And then I stopped until I met my current girlfriend, who actually works with me in my company, Cloudy Box. She's the set designer for most of the projects. But it wasn't up until I met her that I was like, oh, well, it's kind of funny. It was kind of sort of like a flirtatious thing. I was like, yeah, I do this. I write movies. You know, I do movies. And then I actually hadn't fucking done a movie in like years. Mm-hmm. And then, because I met her junior year. And so I had done a movie that was 8th grade, about 2.5 years. So it was still, you know, again, back to writing. Yeah. But then that's when around that time is when I started, I made Cloudy Box. I had the name at the time in 2015 when I had met her. And then still didn't do anything for about a couple of years. And then we had our daughter. That's when like life was like, oh shit. Yeah. I was like, I got to make money. Because I think I was working at Target. I had like $1,200 at the time, and I went to go to Best Buy and I bought the Canon T5i DSLR camera. And then I think a couple months after that, I directed my first music video, like for somebody else. And then it's funny, she was in it, and then she also did some of the set design. And then that's what really started like the current workflow of like what we do now is, in terms of my company, it's just like, okay, we're going to do this music video. We're going to design, you know, even if it was like something basic, it was like we wanted to have a little bit of depth and stuff, because, you know, at first we started to do exactly what was done here in City, which was like, you know, getting the DSLR, pointing it at the rapper, and then like having them rap over their lyrics, and then, you know, not really much else. Maybe they're next to like a gas station, but, you know, there was like nothing really exciting. But and then I wanted to start incorporating, like I said, sets, like, oh, what if we shot this in a garage, and there was like a smoke machine, and then we had like this like these like Halloween decorations, and it was just like real spooky shit, like just stuff that just wasn't like that, like I just didn't see amongst other music videos, because a lot of people were just shooting in like their house, a gas station, their living room, you know what I mean?
Train tracks.
And then and then we just, that snowballed into mostly the work that I get hired for, which is kind of funny because it's the exact opposite. You do more commercial work. I do more like music video work. And I only do those like maybe once, or no, not once, maybe like 3 or 4 times a year.
Cool.
Yeah. So but it's steady, you know, because they do take a lot more work than like, say, like if we were to show up at a gas station, it's like, all right, man, you know. But then I stepped away from doing rap because the rap videos were starting to get a little repetitive. You know, there's only so much set design you can do for somebody rapping about their problems. Sure. I shifted away completely and started moving to singer-songwriters.
Cool.
That really was, that's where like the drive to sort of make things that were just as similar to the short film. So it was almost like a creative exercise in a way. It's like, oh, I can start testing these things that I really like about, or that I want to test in a movie, but I don't want to like, you know, get like this big crew for. So
the genres almost open up for that storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
So really it was just myself, my longtime girlfriend, Alexandria, and then my best friend, Jacob, just us 3 for like, I think up until like 2019 till 2022. My best friend was like, hey dude, I'm gonna go get a real job, and I was like, yeah, I know hard feelings. You know what I mean?
It's tough.
Well, it's funny because he actually never wanted to do like the video stuff in the first place. So when we started getting COVID hit, and we started like not doing anything, and then we were like, it was kind of awkward because we literally were like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
We had nothing.
Mask on for a video.
Yeah, literally. But that's when I started writing. I went back to writing. So I was like, I think I'm gonna do another short film. I had done some shorts up until then, alongside the music videos, but going back to your point, I had always sort of been in a bubble. Like I never knew this dude existed. I knew you guys can't see him, but our behind the scenes guy, Jackson. I knew about him for years, but I never actually like spoke to him face to face until like I actually completed my latest short, Smile Not Cry Later, which was in 2023. And we premiered my short and his short together. It was always like just social media interaction. And that was mainly because I didn't want to step out because I felt like I still had a lot to learn. So I didn't want to like come and talk to people and look like a fucking idiot.
You know what though? And I think that like I love that Keanu brought that up because I think that's been the key, you know, and like everything that you've been saying, I've just been kind of listening to and like looking at like patterns and stuff because it kind of blows my mind. Like there's so many commonalities I see like in filmmakers. And one of those things too is also that I think a lot of filmmakers tend to be on the introverted side, you know, like, and I can understand as like somebody who's very naturally introverted, you know, I think my biggest struggle is ever just kind of, all right, let me go, you know, I gotta do the work, but
I gotta talk to these people.
Yeah. But it's funny because I came into the filmmaking business in an odd way because, you know, I'm driven by creativity. I'm driven by the art of it. Like that's what motivates me truthfully. But I happened to get into it from a business angle, and all of my jobs like before I did that were like in sales and the financial world and stuff like that. So I came from a very odd way like and that was like all the first jobs that I had. And so, you know, finally when I kind of realized that there was this kind of problem with filmmakers like not, you know, mingling, I'm like I think part of it is that like one, you have to put there's kind of a humility of being able to have to put your ego aside a little bit to make it welcoming in the first place. You know, like I think it's so easy to, and I understand too, because when I first got started, there was an insecurity about my skill sets, and I felt that I had to put on some sort of performance that I was here, or project myself as if I was there in order to be credible, you know? And at some point I just said, this is just silly, you know, like,
here I am.
It's just, this is who I am. This is where I'm at, you know, I am what I am and I'm okay with that, you know, like, but I think coming into a conversation with trying to like connect with a filmmaker and doing that, opens the door, you know, and I think I'm in a position now to do it a lot better than I was then, because now we have like a lot of legitimacy and there's a lot of stuff there that, you know, I don't feel like there's any, you can go and see our stuff and see, hey, these guys are serious, you know? So there's no need to do that. If anything, I feel the need to make it more inviting and not make it like, hey, I know I'm talking to you who's like an up and coming filmmaker and you're probably seeing the situation the way I would if I was in your shoes, and being very like feeling a need to do that. So I feel like if I open up the conversations that way and make it inviting and like, hey man, look, everybody's got something to learn. Everybody's on a different path. Everybody's got different skill sets. There's other, you can come in here wherever you're at. And I feel like, you know, you're only going to grow from it. It's only going to be a better thing. I think that's been helpful. And I think like our filmmaking community has been growing significantly because I've tried to make a huge outreach and just trying to bring filmmakers together. and everybody's benefited from it, I feel, so far. You know?
No, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's good,
I feel like that's like the biggest thing, and that was literally my problem. Was like I couldn't step outside of my house because I felt like, oh, I hadn't done enough.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I would feel like, oh, I don't really want to associate with people that was like, I don't know, like I didn't see them on the same like skill level, which is kind of like, and it's funny how I broke that. And it's the same theme as my film, is I just did a lot of acid. that'll do it for you. I did. It was a summer right before I did my latest film, where it was just a summer of just doing a bunch of acid, periodically, obviously responsibly. Responsibly.
Yeah, 30 days of acid.
Keyword.
No, that's the keyword. It's responsibly. But I mean that was the biggest thing for me, was like I can't. Like I had such a problem with the way people were talking to me about my skill set that I found myself sometimes behaving that way towards like people that were just starting out, and I had to like stop myself and really strip the ego from the soul. Yeah. And the only way I knew how to do that was with acid.
Yeah. Forcibly.
And then that inspired the film Smile Now Cry Later, and it was tremendously helpful. Like it's so funny because I look back. And I know it worked because I look back and I'm like literally physically sick, because I'm like, dude, I can't believe that. Like, A, I was scared to come out and talk to people, or B, even having those thoughts of like, oh, I'm better than this person, or this, you know what I mean? And especially since I had just barely started being confident in my work, I was like, dude, who the fuck am I to like sit here and you know what I mean, and like judge people for, so it was a really like eye-opening moment in that transitional period from 2022 to 2023, and then especially when I finished Smile Now Cry Later, my latest film, I felt still super proud of it. We had that screening, and I was like, dude, all these people here, and I saw it, and that's when I really saw everybody for like, dude, everybody here is doing some badass fucking work. And it was everybody in that room where I was like, dude, yeah, this is killer. Yeah, it was cool. It was a good moment, and definitely life altering experience for sure.
Yeah, it's a cool balancing act too, because it's like, a big goal of mine has been to like try to connect filmmakers in town, but then also try to like level up too. Yeah. But I think like the key thing is just like, I think a lot of people approach it with the level up mindset first, instead of the, hey, let's kind of form community, then do that. Yeah. And so then I think it makes it uninviting, because then the first thing that you're getting kind of thrown at is like, hey, we're trying to set the bar up, and it already sets it off for that kind of, okay, now I'm comparing myself thing, and so, we still want to like level up the community. And I think I love San Antonio. I'm very passionate about San Antonio. I think there's a lot of filmmakers that have a lot of potential. Just like all of us do, it's like, and I was in the same, that's the thing, is like, I know where I was, 10 years ago versus where I am now. So everybody's on a track. But in my mind, if we're all trying to, if we're even more aware of just kind of where that track is, and maybe how high the bar can be, but still in this communal way, I think it kind of elevates it in a way that's also bringing it together.
Kind of lets people know too, like, maybe I'm not at the level I thought I was at, but there's someone in the community who can offer an extra step or some advice. Like,
literally, it's an eye-opening experience for sure, because I definitely like, that's what I admire about Christian, is that he's able to see kind of like, or he's able to admit like weaknesses in himself, just like, I have to, like, I'm terrible at fucking lighting. But Jackson here, he knows how to light a scene. Like, if you tell him to light the scene right now, he probably could. Yeah. But I wouldn't be able to. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, it takes that sort of level of like, and I think you said it best, because when I come in and work with Christian or people that he's around, I don't feel that way. But sometimes I do feel the same when I step outside of Christian's bubble and I'm having to go to other productions. I get reminded that like not everybody's as open. Or is like, and I'm like, oh fuck, I still the Wild West out here. You know what I mean? Like, it is, yeah. And so it goes to show myself, and it's a good reminder. Like, Christian has built a pretty good community, and I think you said it best. It's almost like you're introducing a lot of people to it, and so. And sometimes I step on other sets and some people bark. Yeah. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Like, I can't make a suggestion to you. You know what I mean? Because people,
Yeah.
They have their way. It's ego. It's,
a little too serious about themselves.
Yeah, they can't separate the art between the mindset, and it's
all right, well, good luck.
Aspect of like humility and like honesty and all of it. It's very important. Like just building the community, because it's like you're saying, like putting the community before the goal of like being better.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? What do you want to be better for? The community.
Right.
It's like, well, you need to focus on that.
And to me too, like, when I got into the world of actually working with other people and like enjoying them, and like I'm like, okay, now I understand. Now I get what it's about. Like it's fun doing it with a team and that vision.
Yeah.
And so, to me that's what it's all about. And I do think I do think like there's like as a producer now too, like it's almost I think that kind of forced me to have to try to like really put that to the test and make sure I felt that way, because while I'm saying all this, like I'm incredibly opinionated, like incredibly opinionated, but I'm at the same time, and I think Keanu knows, like I'm very, very PC, like I'm very diplomatic.
Yeah. Cool.
And I get it. Like, I mean, I wouldn't want somebody, if I ask for feedback, I wouldn't want somebody to be like, oh, this sucks,
What do you mean it sucks?
Right. Yeah, it's not helpful, but at the same time, like time and place, and also like, relation with the person too, I think a little bit, like if I just met you or like you're asking, I'm like, I don't feel, maybe we get to know each other before I like can be super honest with you.
Yeah.
And it's not that, it's just a balancing act, but ultimately, like it's cool because when I've been producing some of these films, I've always been pure like a writer and director. And always, and a lot of times I do my own cinematography too. So I'm very much like creatively in control of what's going on. And it's been a challenge for me to kind of like step into somebody else's world and let them run the vision and not impede it, but also not aid it, like in a way where I'm like letting them have their room to have their vision and creativity, but also not be like passive and be like, all right, what happens?
Sure, that's good.
And it's tricky because like sometimes you question like, well, this is a vision thing versus this is an efficiency thing. So some things are more obvious than others because if it's, one thing as a producer, hey, if we're talking money, we're talking about anything else, like obvious. But then we get into that weird gray area and problem solving, and it's like, if you have an idea and everybody's struggling to solve the problem, you kind of feel like you have a right to say it.
Yeah. That's part of the creative process.
That's part of the process.
Back to, again, like why you're there. So
yeah. And I think you still open it up in like a way where you're not dictating it, but you kind of say, hey, you know what? I really think this will solve our problem. And I think when you pose it in that way, it doesn't come across as like, hey, director, I'm taking over your thing.
Yeah. It's not like confrontational.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And a good idea is a good idea. And I think that's the key. Is just as long as everybody knows they're in it for the project and not for their piece of the pie, like I think that's the key,
And
that's what I felt good energy about with these past 3 projects. Like everybody was very much on the wavelength I felt of like, hey, it's about the project. It's not about my part in the project.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
teamwork makes the dream work. As they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally, yeah. I don't think I would have been. I know I wouldn't have been as far with Edge of Darkness without support of Christian, Manuela, Jackson, the whole team. Even the actors, man, like the actors I feel like I've been stringing along, like with a fucking carrot on the stick, because I reached out to them. They were the first people I reached out to, which was kind of funny because I don't know, like I just in my mind, like when I began to get serious about like we might do this, I knew who I wanted to be in the movie, but I even right now I can't tell you why I reached out to them so early. But I told, like, I sat them down and said, hey, look, this is going to be a long ride. But we can utilize this time to rehearse and to talk about, like, build backstory, because we're only adapting the first act of a feature film for Edge of Darkness. We're only doing the first 30 pages of a much larger story. So I knew, like, okay, if we lead with that, then we might have some leg room here to sort of build something that's a little bit more, cohesive than, say, like if it was just a short film and like it didn't continue past this. I knew that like if I was going to collect the players, that they were going to play at least for the long run, and so thankfully nobody's dropped out yet, and I don't think anybody will. So it's and I think part of that goes back to the work that we've put in and shown them, like, hey, look, I still check. We have a group chat. I still check in at least once or twice a month. This is what we're doing. This is what we're recording. I'll send them pictures just to know that I'm alive. And
Like we're still going.
there's a big stigma. And I know you can probably back me up on this. There's a big stigma of like projects being made here, overselling it, and then just something happens.
Yeah.
And it's really the Achilles heel, and then you never hear from this person ever again. And then 6 months will go by, they're doing another movie.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
And it's like, what happened to the other one? It's in the what do they say in Hollywood? The editing bay.
Right.
It's in the editing bay.
Yeah.
Like, all right, dude.
Yeah. That's that keyword balance again.
Yeah.
I love the word balance to me. That's like I don't know. It just every time I say balance, I'm like, yeah, you could use that word to explain how to handle that. But I think there's people that like never make their movie because they're such perfectionists and meticulous, and I tend to live a little more in that camp. And then there's people that make way too many movies. It's just like, and so there's two extremes, and I think like there's a sweet spot right there in the middle.
Yeah,
there's a sweet spot, so somewhere floating around there, and that's the key, I think. And I think San Antonio is definitely much more of a let me just make a movie community right now. And so that's why I think like there's a balance to be struck a little more somewhere here in the middle. Hey, maybe these things need refinement. Maybe some of these things need a little bit more, polish.
I think that kind of comes with the repetition of it. You're like, like you were saying, like you make it, then you look at it and you're like, oh, why did I think this was good? And
Right.
Move forward and forward.
Yeah.
Well, and I think when I started to realize that, okay, I think Tarkov is going to be my next project after Smile Not Cry Later, because Smile Not Cry Later is a very different project than Edge of Darkness. Very it's about a guy doing acid, sort of uncovering childhood trauma. So going from that to political thriller military was definitely a jump, but a lot of the themes and I'm sorry, not actual like story themes, like technical themes and just like visual themes carry over from Smile Out to Edge of Darkness. Like again, that slow burn aspect to it. Like I didn't want this to be an action film. It's more drama based. It's got human elements. I'm very much into like just wanting to explore the human psyche and what makes a human, especially with changing course from, okay, let's put these military guys just on the secondary seat, not the true back seat, but just like, okay, these are going to be A, B, and C characters. The A characters, the scavenger. How can we bring that to be more human? It's very much inspired by a lot of the refugee stories. A lot of what's happening right now in current times. Over there on the other side of the pond, Russia and Ukraine, all that stuff over there. So it's very, very, very inspired by our real, sort of political climate. And so I think definitely drawing those themes into Edge of Darkness was sort of like, I don't want to say natural, but it just made sense. Like, okay, I don't want to, like, if I'm going to do this video game movie, I kind of want to guise it as like an art house film. Like, can we approach this in a way that like, is again, like you said earlier, we've seen video game adaptations. Halo, most famously, had 2 seasons on Paramount, deviated from the source. Borderlands just came out with a movie that should have been great, right? You had amazing source material, amazing sort of very Deadpool-like, dialogue in the games. I think they even brought Tim Miller to direct some of the action sequences, but they gave it to fucking Eli Roth. You know what I mean? The guy who did Hostel or the Green
Seems
Inferno.
Like a nice choice, yeah.
Yeah, like and then it definitely seemed like the studio was like, oh, we could have given this to Tim Miller. Let's just have him do the reshoots. So it's like, it definitely seems like there's not a lot of like thought that goes into, because again, it's a lot of like, they look at these properties as like sort of like money. It's like, these guys are going to come watch this movie. Let's just sort of, they think they know storytelling and then they just butcher it. And so we didn't want to do that with this one.
It is weird. That's why there's a very big disparity right now between like the largest sides of like, the movie industry and the smallest sides, in the sense that like, you look at something like a Borderlands, or you look at something like a, it's maybe a little more hot topic, but depending on how you feel about it, you look at something like the new Star Wars trilogy or something, and you think, man, how did they not have a plan? That's pretty wild. And that much money and that much. I know.
We need people on our side.
We would take a deal. That's all I'm saying. No, but
Disney.
I'll change my opinion.
All right, I'll change that like in 2 seconds. But it's funny because I think like you see that. And obviously there's a lot more complexity. Like from a small level, you see it and you say, man, somebody like they just made it. In reality, there's 100 million like corporate politics involved and things that just screw things up that seem like super stupid simple, but it's almost so big and so convoluted that in reality it actually is a bunch of weird little pieces that cause what it happens. Like, so it does make sense when you look at it practically, but like, but we all understand like why something goes wrong, you know. So I think as long as you're conscious of that and you try to avoid that, you know, that's what's nice about making at least smaller productions. There's less cooks in the kit. There's less things involved, but the hurdles are much bigger, you know. And
that's very true.
That's kind of the interesting dynamic.
When I think of like video game adaptations, generally it's like indie, like short film stuff. Like, or I mean, there's the bigger ones obviously, but the ones that stick with you, like the good ones, like kind of like I've seen some cool Portal ones. Like you ever play Portal? Like just like little, like just people made it because they love the thing. Like it's kind of like what you guys are doing. It's like just want to do it. Yeah, because you love it so much. Like you have such a relation.
I was actually talking to Jackson about the Portal short film. I was directed by Dan Trachtenberg.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and he got the attention of J.J. Abrams, and then J.J. Abrams wanted him to develop an actual like feature length of Portal, but then corporate politics got in the way. Fast forward a few years, they gave him 10 Cloverfield Lane, and then that movie actually was really good. That had John Goodman in it, and then they gave him Prey, that recent Predator movie. So yeah, he definitely worked the ladder, but that took him like I think 10 years from when he did the Portal film to having Prey. Yeah, and then now he's doing Badlands, which is the sequel to Prey. Which I think is supposedly supposed to be set in World War One. Which is badass, dude. A Predator movie in World War.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. I don't know though. That's a rumor.
Is that in Predator 2? Is that like when they have that old gun at the end? Is that where that's from? Maybe I don't know. I don't remember where that was.
It's been a long time.
It's like an old different time period. They give him like a old revolver or something.
That's right.
I'm curious if it's like tied into that.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about.
I need to rewatch that. It's been a while.
Dude, it's funny.
I have to rewatch the Alien movies because of Romulus. Yeah. Alexandria hasn't seen him.
I heard it's good.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I have to. I've heard it's really good. Yeah.
I'm excited.
What would you say your favorite director is?
Mine? Yeah. Oh, fuck. Really? On the spot like that?
Just a favorite. You have to pick one.
I mean, just because he just stylistically, just Denis Villeneuve. His films always.
Hard not love that guy right now.
Yeah. What really sealed the deal was Sicario. Like I'd seen the only film I haven't seen from him was Incendies. But I'd seen Enemy, I'd seen Prisoners, Blade Runner 2049. And then Sicario. Sicario really showed me, as well as Denis, like that really showed me like military films don't have to be, because there's always like they're always sort of one and the same. You know what I mean? Like they're always very like hoorah in a way. They always feel very patriotic. Yeah, but Sicario really brought that aspect to it, where like
muddiness of it. They're like
like not everything you see here is like is going to be like official, like and especially the most important shot for me that really like oh fuck, this is gonna be a good movie, and it's a shot that you would never even think about, is when they do a wide on Josh Brolin's character, and he's in this fucking CIA meeting, and he's got sandals on.
Oh yeah.
And then Emily Blunt, she's like in this like nice like suit, and she's like looking down at him, and then like they're talking about fucking invading the cartel. Right. And that really was like, oh, okay,
we're so many good little small moments.
Yeah, like okay, we're really getting dirty here. So, and then just the cinematography on top of all that, man, it just was gorgeous.
Roger Deakins, so good.
Oh yeah. Well, to me, it's the humanity of it. I think that's what it's just understanding how to like convey, and that's really the crazy part about war. And it's I think Stanley Kubrick was a very early on one with Full Metal Jacket to do that. My favorite director.
It's a good one.
And it's cool because I think like you see. There's just some movies that just understand like how to get to that core substance of it, and I think like there's something like Denis so good at, which is just, and to me, and this is it, being like in the position I'm in now. Like I really like kind of seeing filmmakers and almost trying to see like, okay, like they're really good here, and this is like the area. But to me, it's a little bit more clear what those things are now, and I think sometimes it's like the very simple parts of filmmaking that just aren't incorporated. And like so many things that like Denis Villeneuve does is like so simple. It's just like, even it's just like a thought process sometimes, because like I'll notice that, it's almost what you're aware of sometimes, like as a director, as a writer, that allows you to have a certain skill set. Like, you know, if you go into something like as a director or writer and you don't really have a concept of like blocking, or that doesn't even kind of cross your mind, you just think about it as like, here's a person talking, here's a person talking, here's a person sitting. Like blocking doesn't even cross your mind, you know, so you just like default straight into camera here, camera there, camera here. And when you see somebody like Denis, he understands very simple practical elements of filmmaking, which is blocking. And it's like, hey, I want to show and also like going through an order of a process with the scene, understand what's important about it. Like, okay, why am I doing this scene? What am I trying to emphasize in this scene? What would communicate those things? Then now how do the characters interact and what are they trying to say with the scene? To me, like there's parts of that process of chain of thought process that can fall off that cause something to not have like depth. And I think that the depth part is really like, it's not all the flash, it's not all the pizzazz. To me, it's that level of depth and just richness where you feel like you're constantly being provided like information. There's something there under the surface, and it's not like, it gives you a reason to not disengage, you know? And I think that's really good movie making. Like, and that's what I think Denis is so great at. Like, and that's the things that I think too, like I really, really want to see here. It's just that level of like depth of just kind of understanding all the layers that make something top tier so good.
That's definitely what, like when we were talking about like the aesthetic for Edge of Darkness, you know, I was saying like, it's, you know, technically we're actually, so the film's not going to have any like handheld shots, which to me is pretty significant. And, you know, to the average viewer, it probably won't matter, but that to me is, I didn't want action to be like crazy. I didn't want the camera to be moving. I didn't want like, I wanted to, you know, war is not pretty. And so I wanted the audience to really bask in that, you know what I mean? And how can I convey something as awful as war without having to like get too crazy with it? Because I've seen that in a lot of military movies, and it makes sense, you know, have the camera to be moving with the action. But I've also seen, you know, action sequences, and this is actually a funny example, but John Wick has done it better in the most recent memory. And that's really, you know, articulated and choreographed action sequences, and just letting the camera just kind of move around that. Especially in John Wick 4, there's a lot of dope sequences where, you know, John himself is just going through these guys, and the camera's moving, but it's all, you know, real smooth dolly track shots, and you really get to watch what he's doing, how he's doing it. And that kind of goes in line with more choreography and all that stuff, but the camera does help that it's not like cutting so often in between one action, this, you know what I mean? You're seeing somebody fully engage in what they're supposed to be doing. And so, yeah, it's when I was talking to Christian, and I was like, you know, that I think that ties into that whole depth that we're trying to capture, is like, okay, the action needs to feel like we're following these characters that know how to fight. But maybe they catch themselves in a really shitty situation. What does that look like? How do we follow that? Like, how can we follow that as closely to what we see? Like, and I studied a lot of like war footage, and it's crazy, you know, nowadays, 2024, man, how easy you can get access to that. You can just, So, especially now, you know, with the conflicts that are happening right now, and you know, people are just wearing GoPros, and you know, and so
stream it on Twitch,
literally, so I've been really watching, like, mainly to not to study camera angles, but really to study like the atmosphere of what we're trying to recreate. How do people fall when they get hit? Where is it, you know, how does a bullet impact? My biggest pet peeve, to be honest with you, is the muzzle flashes. And I remember having a small conversation about muzzle flashes. Was like, when a gun is fired, it's not like a big flash. Like it's when the gas hits the back of that bullet, the light barely can almost like be shown. It's going so fast. So most of the time you're only seeing like the dust leave the barrel. And if you're lucky, you might catch like half of a muzzle flash. But it looks really like blocky almost, and not as like big and pompous as like most video games or even filmmaking.
It's just lighting up the room.
It's really like, you know, almost just surreal. Like, it's just so fast, you can't even get it. Like, realistically, you cannot get a grasp on what you're saying. And so talking to the VFX guys, it was like, I don't want like, even when they get hit, and depending on where they get hit, if they get hit in the chest, depending on when we start blocking out those sequences, there's armor there, so you're not going to see blood. It's got to be like dust, and maybe a spark, depending on if they hit the Kevlar, or if they get hit in the shoulder, depending on how we're going to be blocking these sequences. That's when the blood comes in, and even the sounds really bug me in a fucking movie. Like, they always sound really processed. And I remember talking to Christian, like, hey, because we're going to be recording all of our audio for the movie, I really want to, and it's actually to our advantage, all of the movies are going to be shot outside, so we really get to play around with those gun sounds. And we're using obviously prop weapons, but when we go for sound design, I'm definitely looking to take a more Michael Mann approach, really loud, really because guns don't really
go like a shooting range or something and just record that.
Record it that way.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So definitely not looking for the more processed, and going for that more like realistic version of what you see, like, if you were scrolling on Reddit maybe and just saw somebody in the trenches. But it's definitely a process to sort of achieve that depth for sure.
Well, the key thing too is like why, because Tarkov is immersive, so to recreate that feeling, I think we need to create immersion in the movie. Mm-hmm. So I think there needs to be some elements that don't feel like perfectly movie captured as much as they do, like war.
Right.
Reality.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was gonna say we should submit like something like the poster.
Oh yeah,
a little blurb or something about the movie.
Yeah, we could. I mean, this specific issue coming up is like America/politics theme. So I mean, it could kind of work in there. I think.
That would be perfect.
Yeah. Do you have anything? I can. It's just a A6 format for the zine. Or I'll give you guys some copies actually after this. But also don't let me forget. We gotta take a photo.
Oh yes,
America/politics themed. Their next issue.
Oh really?
The one that take submissions for. Yeah.
That would work out perfectly.
That's pretty
cool. I tried not to lead with telling that, because I like to keep it that like I've been pitching Edge of Darkness like a political thriller as an action movie, but like it's very
in that world.
It's very very focused on like, because it's like my first time I get to talk about like at least as an adult, like what I think about politics and like where I fall in that and like what I think is right and wrong. And
you'll ever end up getting into any politics around here?
In the podcast?
Yeah.
Not too much. We talk about a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I'm all for it, but I mean, it's just most people don't really want to talk about it or bring it up, I guess.
That's what I figured.
No, yeah, me too. Like, I don't even know what I should, like, I was kind of tipping over like the Palestine and Gaza, but like that's where like inspiration from the refugee side comes from in Edge of Darkness. But then last time I mentioned in a marketing video that the film kind of treads on that water, and BSG was like, no, remove it. Yeah, remove it, please. Because I guess they insinuated that we were talking about the game, because I had said like Edge of Darkness is a political film, and then they were like,
they took it as like, in other words, it's a political statement.
Yeah,
not that we're saying it's
in that
politics,
world,
like I think that's how they read it.
Yeah,
and it was just like, well, that's not what we meant.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, like obviously they were okay with it because they read the script. Like, I think it was just the framing of us political.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
So Edge of Darkness, or Instagram. That's right.
Yes, you can follow the film's updates, the launch of the Kickstarter, which will be happening very, very soon. I'm going to pull a page out of Battlestate Games' book and say soon. Don't ask me when, just soon.
Yeah.
But you can follow us at EFT Fan Film. And like I said, everything you need to know about the project is there. There's already some posts about it that kind of give you a little crash course on kind of who we are, what we're doing. And then hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we're going to launch, and then the floodgates will open. You'll definitely be seeing us on social media, because Battlestate Games has been gracious enough to come into agreement to reshare most of our marketing content. So
that's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, we're going to be coming full force for sure, but we're still preparing some stuff. Yeah. But I'm excited, dude. I cannot wait.
It's going to be fun.
I can't wait to talk to the community, really, because either just to talk shit or just to talk about the movie. No, I'm kidding. But it's gonna be fun. Like once the community really knows about it, and I do stream the game from time to time on Twitch. it's gonna be fun being able to like speak to the community I've adored for so long and I've held very close to my heart. So I'm very, very excited. And thank you guys for allowing us to
thanks for
coming and yap a little bit about our project.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, very excited. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What about you guys want to plug your personal page or like business pages or other accounts?
You can find all my stuff at Christian Stryder, and it's with a Y. And then also Stride Studios, STRYDE Studios is our business page.
And you can find me on Instagram at Keanu Cordero. I fought very hard for that name.
Yeah.
I did, because I was Keanu the director for the longest time, and that's such a high school like Keanu the director. I don't know. It just was always corny to me. And
Christian the person.
Well, I'd always wanted to change it to my actual name, and I shit you not, I don't have it anymore, but I had a reminder on my phone that to remind me to see if it was available, like once a week.
Oh yeah.
Because for the longest time it wasn't, and so I found one of these days, like just out of my religious, obsessive, like repetitious, cycle. Yeah. I typed in my name, Keanu Cordero, and I was like, "Oh, username is available."
Yeah.
So it was awesome. So yeah, Keanu Cordero. Very, very proud of that.
Yeah.
Cool. And mine's actually Keanu the director now. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what's funny? I went back to see if it was available because I was going to make that page like a photography page. Somebody fucking took it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Dude, I know. It was so heartbreaking. I was like, damn. Good couple years. But yeah. So
yeah. Really appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Looking forward to seeing the film and where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have you out to the premiere very soon.
For sure.
That'd be
I'll
dope.
let you guys out.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Or maybe we can even have you guys out to take a look at what we're doing maybe.
Oh, yeah.
One of the days we're shooting. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Well, thank
Cool.
you guys.
Hell yeah. Thank you.
Anytime.